Hi, I'm Greg Gutfeld with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and she snowboards on a bottle cap. Dana Perino, The 5. New arrests in connection with Monday's terror attack in Manchester. Authorities are still hunting down the bomb maker before the jihadis can strike again. Details ahead. But first, expecting wisdom from a pop star is like expecting sonnets from a gerbil. Except last night, Bono said this of terrorists.
They hate music, they hate women, they even hate little girls. They hate everything that we love. And, you know, the worst of humanity was on view in Manchester last night, but so was the best, as people took Perfect Strangers into their houses and queued up for blood banks. And Manchester has a undefeatable spirit, I can assure you.
He's right. Islamists see fun as evil, maybe because it's missing in their ghoulish, cowardly lives. Pop singer Morrissey from the Smiths, you remember them, went even further. When the Manchester mayor, Andy Burnham, called the attacker an extremist, Morrissey asked, an extreme what? An extreme rabbit? This is the same mayor who said the jihadist was a terrorist and not a Muslim. Sorry, guy, he's both. But to avoid the bigot stigma, the mayor avoids a truth, which is a pattern. BBC News claims the calls were made to a terror hotline about the bomber years before he struck. So why no action? Could it be, again, the fear of appearing bigoted? But at least some entertainers are starting to reject this. Maybe they realize that hugs won't bring peace, but a willingness to fight does. You want to know how pop music actually flourished? How the Beatles were able to sing All You Need Is Love? You can thank veterans who dispatched heinous enemies in some really ugly wars, giving pop music center stage in long periods of peace. So can music survive under a caliphate? I doubt it. ISIS has no use for Coldplay. Bataclan, the Pulse nightclub, Manchester, all young people, all music fans, all targets. So maybe it's time we speak less of love and more about evil. Maybe it's time for All You Need Is Guts. So, Jesse, what do you make of Bono? I mean, he's always a clear-eyed thinker in this thing, and I think he kind of, like, explained it fairly succinctly.
Yeah, I think it was a very courageous thing for Bono to say. I mean, I remember after 9/11 in this country, there was a lot of unity. And you had people like Bruce Springsteen, liberal guy who was doing free concerts for a lot of these victims. George Clooney, liberal guy, raising a lot of money. And you had even Hillary was down at Ground Zero, Schumer, Bush, everybody was together. And I think after 9/11, you know, everybody came together and we wanted to go after Afghanistan. There was a lot of bipartisan support. That dissipated. But when pop stars, especially liberal pop stars, can speak the truth about evil, it galvanizes people that are apolitical, young Americans, liberal Americans, to say, you know what, it's okay to say radical Islam. It's okay to describe the heinous acts that these people are committing. And it gives them license. Because when you're able to do that, and you're clear-eyed and you're united, it enables the country to come together and actually defeat evil instead of just kind of placating it like we've been doing.
You know, Kimberly, entertainers, I think, should step up because it seems to me recently with these examples, they're targeting their fans because I think the belief is you can't be a fan of their God if you're a fan of a pop star. So it's almost like, you know, it's some kind of sacrilege or you know, because you go to Ariana Grande and not a mosque. So shouldn't more pop stars be speaking out?
Yes, I think it's courageous because people do listen. They have a voice, and Bono is exactly right. They hate our whole way of life. They hate everything about Western civilization. They can't stand the freedom that we have in this country as women. I mean, how horrific to target specifically young girls, women, and their parents that are going to a concert like this. This was no accident. This was specific. And if you see under Sharia law, nothing but disdain for women, for children. You have young girls being sold into slavery by ISIS, being raped and tortured. Horrific things, some of them so bad that you don't even hear about them in the media. They don't even want to talk about them on the news. But this is the reality of the situation. You have to be able to face it. You have to be able to deal with it and use a variety, a platform of weapons to be able to target them. And by that, I mean, yes, social media and pop stars and education. And you've got to be able to put out your own propaganda to match theirs, because otherwise you have people that will be attracted to this, people like the president called them evil losers, people that specifically are looking for somewhere to go, for some relevancy in their lives, and they're just sitting there waiting for something like this and for radical jihad to soak into them so that they can commit some kind of act that they think is significant, so that their life has some matter to it, some importance.
Dana, most entertainers, they prefer the safe route. So it's about going online and saying hashtag love, peace, let's live in harmony, all that stuff. At a certain point, shouldn't they just stop that and say love is not enough? It's time to act.
Well, musicians used to be radical,
Yes.
right? So, like, that was one of the things that musicians pushed the envelope, especially on cultural things. And in fact, one of the big stories, especially out of the civil rights movement, was really that musicians were actually helpful to try to bring people together. But they were pushing the envelope, too. They were making people question past practices. Interesting thing here is that in Western civilization, we send our children to concerts. Abadi's father sent him to die, to kill other people. And so when you're dealing with that type of an ideology, I'm not exactly sure how you fix it, but you mentioned something last week. I don't think it was on air, but we're talking about the Toby Keith concert in Saudi Arabia, and of course there weren't women allowed, so there was a little bit of controversy there. But the truth is that young Muslim people like our culture.
Yes.
They like the music. They maybe have to listen to it privately. So if I were the politicians, and there's some new people on the scene, Theresa May, Macron, President Trump, why not recruit some of these musicians to actually help? Call upon their patriotism, ask them to help to either put on some big event if they want. If they actually have the power to reach a lot more people than we do.
That's a good point,
Justin Trudeau
Juan.
called Justin Bieber.
Yeah, I mean, there are amazing
Send
examples.
Bieber to Iraq. That'll solve everything.
That would be interesting, But, they have these amazingly historical concerts, Juan. We remember Live Aid, but nothing you could raise awareness for global warming, climate change, you name it. You can get them, celebrities to show up like that. But why not for this? Why not something?
I'm surprised that you guys describe Bono as courageous. I think Bono just spoke common sense.
Well, that is courageous.
No,
in this
it's
day
not.
and
But
age.
let me just say, I've been here when you guys say, oh, you know what, these people, these artists, they're speaking out about climate change or discrimination. Oh, who listens to them?
Because that's easy. Because that's easy, Juan.
No, let me tell you.
It's so easy.
Oh, and you think it's easy to say, and I'll say it right now, terrorists are bad, evil, and slimy people who want to kill us.
Yeah,
that's so hard to say. No. I think you have to get away from simple kind of, oh, if Bono says that we've made a breakthrough. No, we got to find effective ways to combat. Dana was talking about this is an age where we have to effectively produce our own positive images to contradict the idea that they're going to be martyred, that they are smarter or they're being courageous when they do horrific acts like we saw in London or Manchester.
She's right, and this is part of it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is, you want an all-hands-on-deck philosophy.
Sure.
If it's just Republicans or if it's just right-wing people in Britain or America that are leading the charge against ISIS, and the country's not unified, and the rest of the left is sitting around, listening to Katy Perry and twiddling their thumbs and afraid to say radical Islam, it's not going to work. But if you can get someone like Bono or Ariana Grande to say, hey, this is evil, it's going to rally people that don't usually pay attention, that's a good thing.
Well, you see, to me, after 9/11, you were describing how everybody rallied here. President Bush's ratings were up through the roof. I mean, it's not only that you could be in Republican enclaves and see support. You could be in Democratic enclaves. You could be in Harlem and see flags everywhere. In fact, I think President Bush spoke about that when he was driving out to Yankee Stadium. So everybody's behind. That's what we need here.
But we've
and we need a commitment. And yet, what you hear is people say, oh, it's the immigrants. We got to slow down the immigration, or we got to crack down on refugees. I just think that's the wrong approach.
No, I think we need to crack down on the left, who have created a climate of moral relativism. It's different than 2001. We have gone down a really dark, bad road where people are incapable or judging evil for fear of being accused of bigotry, which is why when those people called the hotline, nobody listened.
Who's afraid of condemning bigotry?
Who's afraid of condemning
I don't get
bigotry?
it. You said they're afraid of being called bigots, condemning bigotry,
Right.
condemning terrorism.
Right.
I don't think this
No,
is
no,
real,
no,
Greg.
no. When you condemn radical Islam, you were called Islamophobia, and people are scared of being smeared.
I don't think that's true.
I agree.
I think not only
Juan,
do I think
didn't that happen
people,
to you? That happened to you on the plane.
No, not on a plane.
Well, no, you said when
No.
someone comes on a plane and they're dressed a certain way, it
Yeah,
makes you a little
it
nervous. You got
makes me
fired
nervous.
for that.
Yes,
but
and
you're
that
not
was-
Islamophobic.
That was actual Islamophobia.
You're not.
That's real Islamophobia.
Islamophobia.
Oh, my
but what I
God.
was going to say is I think
That
there's
wasn't fake.
widespread. Not at all. That's real. But I'm going to say what I think is when you get these Wahhabis, these people,
Yes.
Yeah.
right? I think that's who people need, especially people in the Arab world need to
How
condemn.
can you? What's a better education than watching people slaughter young girls? What more do you need for a call
wake
to
up,
action?
right.
Yeah. I mean, what else do you need? I mean, in the 70s, we had people come to my classrooms to teach us about cults. Right? It was at the time of
Jim Jones.
and SLA and all
Right,
these
Krishna,
weird
yeah.
movements. Yeah, we're going around. And we were scared out of our wits
How
by these
old
people.
are you, Gutfeld?
I'm a young 52. Anyway, my point is this. We aren't doing that. And somebody had written to me and said, how do you talk to kids about this? And I think you can talk to them. You go, we have a planet of human beings, and within that planet is a roving army that seeks to destroy. It's that simple.
Well, you know, it's funny. You can talk to kids, but I talk to Ronan about it all the time, and he had a really good idea. So he said, we've got to do something about this, Mom, and I think we have to go and bomb them. Not the children, but them. And in fact, I might have to strap you to the bomb to go in, because I know you would do a very good job and get them. I'm like, how sweet.
Oh, what a sweet kid.
But Morrissey's other point, which was like, Morrissey is an unusual guy, a militant vegan. Like if he goes to a concert, or if he has a concert, every single vendor cannot have meat there, and it causes just a major hell. But anyway, on this, not only did he go after the mayor of London for not condemning radical Islam or ISIS, he also went after the prime minister, saying it's easy to be tolerant when you're protected.
Yeah, I mean, these guys work in fortresses, and they
Yeah.
get, like, bodyguards. They don't take public transportation.
Excuse me.
Totally
for
disconnected
all
from
your
the regular
praise,
British.
For all your praise, exactly what is the real prescription to solving this problem?
I think last night I gave you a great prescription.
You weren't
you did.
listening.
I was listening.
but
Because
I'll
you
do
know
it
why?
again.
Because it was
Try to
relativism.
say-
Yeah.
You were up to relativism.
Do your
but
little
you know
hand
what?
gestures.
To me,
Juan,
to
you're
me,
doing what I said you
got to
would do.
get beyond saying, "Oh, these pop stars should speak out." Let's talk about what really is going to stop
We
the
do that.
terrorists.
I'm pointing out how refreshing it is to actually hear this.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, you
You
got
have to applaud it.
Whenever they say something you like, it's good. Whenever
No,
they
okay.
condemn
Don't
climate
you
change,
dare besmirch the monologue.
Yeah.
No.
Number
dare.
one, the whole point is to be able to call out radical Islam and risk being called a bigot. That's the gutsiest move you can make, and you should do it whenever possible. When somebody calls you Islamophobic, you say, so what? I don't care. Number two, surveillance. Understand you live in a modern world, and freedom and security go together.
Yeah, I think most Americans agree with you. I don't think people are comfortable being called haters of people who believe in
Exactly.
Islam.
That is the whole
You're making his
strategy.
point.
This whole strategy is that Islamophobia, the term, is designed to shut people down. It's time to say,
It's
screw it.
designed
No,
to
no,
silence.
no.
Yes, it is. It's designed to shame and to silence and to censor that people don't want to get involved,
very
don't want to see
sensitive,
something
Kimberly.
and say something.
You're very sensitive to when people attack Christians in the Middle East. Do we say,
Well,
oh, that's
everyone
good?
should be.
What? And that's what I
don't-
am. So why
anyone
would
should
you
be
be
sensitive to religious
insensitive to someone who,
persecution.
without reason,
Because
would attack
there isn't a
Islam?
radical segment of
Yeah,
Christians
no
beheading
one-
people.
I'm not
Who's attacking
saying that.
Islam?
I'm talking about radical
Yeah,
jihad.
You're
I'm talking
conflating
about Islamic
radical
terror.
jihad with Islam.
Right.
No, what we're
You
saying,
are the
you
bigot.
said Islamophobia, right? You said we
Islamophobia
should
is
be
a fear
comfortable
of phobia.
with Islamophobia.
It's
Am
an
I-
irrational phobia.
Didn't he just say
Islamophobia didn't kill little children in Manchester, Juan.
No, I agree, but he said get
Little
comfortable
British
with
girls are the
Islamophobia.
victims.
No, I said
Not
get comfortable with
Islamic
the
people.
And what he-
accusation. When
Listen.
somebody says you're
Yeah.
being Islamophobic for going after radical
I think
Islam,
you
you
should-
say,
Fine.
so what? What do you got?
No, you know what
He's
I said
saying
when they
don't
said
let
that
the
about me?
word or
I
the
backed
label
them up.
hurt
I
you
said,
and
here's
stop
what I
you.
meant.
Dana, be
Here's why.
quiet. Just stop. You're out of control.
All right.
She's afraid of the Islamophobia.
No, You asked like what we should do. There's lots of different things that you can do, but one of them is that cultural diplomacy actually works very well. The State Department even has an entire wing or an office that they use sports and cultural diplomacy to try to spread the messages that we want to deliver. So we should support them. And I think that the new politicians that are meeting this Friday or tomorrow in Brussels at NATO work together and try to bring something together. I mean, what could it hurt?
Brussels. There's a protest against Donald Trump, a march against Donald Trump in Brussels. Where's your march against radical Islam? Brussels, where there are terrorists, where there are cells in Belgium, and they're having a protest against Trump. I would use the finger, but I realize it's inappropriate.
And we're live.
Okay, now I'll be quiet.
Greg, we got to go.
Okay.
Details on arrests made in connection with the Manchester attack, plus the hunt for the bomb maker next.
Earlier, President Trump delivered new remarks on Monday's terror attack in the UK.
When you see something like happened 2 days ago, you realize how important it is to win this fight. And we will win this fight. It's a horrible situation. What took place is horrible, unthinkable, but we will win 100%.
British police made several arrests today, and Libya took the Manchester bomber's brother and father into custody. Authorities are still on the hunt for the terrorists who made the bomb that killed 22 people and injured dozens of others. Joining us now with more on that effort is Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry. Ed?
Kimberly, good evening. There's a desperate search tonight for the bomb maker that involves not just the British police, but also their military, a sign of just how intense the situation is at this very hour. Remember, ISIS took responsibility for the attack at Manchester Arena. I've spoken to people inside the Trump administration who are deeply concerned that the terrorist who made the bomb that killed so many people is still at large and could mastermind another attack at any time. British and U.S. intelligence officials tell us their assessment is the suicide bomber who died in the attack, Salman Abedi, had recently visited Libya where he could have gotten training, but he was essentially a mule who was outside the arena and set off that bomb that was put together by someone else who's on the run right now. British authorities are trying to close in on the bomb maker with a series of raids that stretch from the UK to Libya, where Abedi's father and younger brother were detained, while Abedi's older brother was one of several people taken into custody in the UK. All of this is why the British Prime Minister Theresa May has increased the UK's terror threat level from severe to critical and ratcheted up all of this even more by sending British Army troops to guard major landmarks like Buckingham Palace, Downing Street, Westminster, and the British Parliament. The Prime Minister declaring that the, quote, spirit of Manchester is far mightier than sick plots of depraved terrorists, though there is real concern tonight about that bomb maker who's still at large. Kimberly, back to you.
Okay, and thanks for that update. Dana, you made a comment earlier in talking about, the children and parents sending their children to these concerts, but this man, this terrorist, his father sent him to die.
Right, and so, again, that's also something that Benjamin Netanyahu said the other day after President Trump made remarks in Israel. He said if the terrorist had actually been attacking a Jewish child, that he wondered if Prime Minister Abbas would actually have said the same thing about terrorism being so evil. And that's why the ideology is what is so difficult. The thing about the Libya connection, I think, is very troubling because Al-Qaeda and ISIS have both been trying to expand. Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, AQM, has been frustrated that ISIS has been getting so much attention. You have thousands of migrants leaving the Libyan coast for Italy and then dispersing throughout Europe and possibly the world. So we now have to have a ton of resources spent to try to find this one guy, plus all the other ones that we're trying to find. So we are asking a tremendous amount of our intelligence community and law enforcement in order to do this. But I thought that Tom Jocelyn of the Weekly Standard today wrote something very interesting. ISIS first claimed responsibility and said there were 30 dead. Okay, it's pretty easy to check that news reports said it's actually 22 dead and 50 injured. It could be that you're seeing now either some sort of a metamorphosis or a combination or a merger between ISIS and AQM or some sort of way that they are utilizing these young people and they don't even realize it's happening. So we could see this as actually evolving even more.
Yeah, but very good point. Okay, so Greg, what do we do now about this and here? Because obviously we see the UK with tremendous resources and also really in-depth intelligence operation there that we work quite well with. If they can hit them there, you think about here.
Well, first, they should get, all their police officers should get guns. That the fact that they don't have guns makes no, I'm not saying that would have prevented this, but you might have an edge if you have guns. And also, we have to acknowledge that there's a network involved which rejects the lone wolf assumption that we always go by. The network wants us to adopt the lone wolf assumption, because if you only believe in lone wolves, you don't look for the network. So whenever you hear the lone wolf story, say, that's for now, that's something to entertain later. I also think, you know, his return was a red flag. Yeah. We have to think about that. Who's in charge of watching the red flags? Do we need more people in charge or running? Should we hire more, create a bigger industry? And again, I return to my earlier point. Why did they miss the red flag? Because political correctness prevents you from focusing on obvious risks, because that would be bigoted. You cannot profile. If you profile, you're done.
It's so true. Political correctness is making us weak, Jesse.
It does. Political correctness kills, and it looks like that might have had a contributing factor here. Think about all the issues we're talking about. We're talking about refugees. We're talking about extreme vetting. We're talking about a country like Libya, where the Trump travel ban targeted. We're talking about family members who were implicated in this, that Trump was criticized for raising the issue whether or not to take these guys out. But let's talk about what really is going on here. This happened from Libya. President Obama and Hillary Clinton toppled Gaddafi. They led from behind and left a failed state because they didn't win the peace. ISIS has taken over. There's militias. It's chaos. Now there's training grounds there. Is Obama or Hillary responsible for the failed state in Libya? And not only that, Obama withdrew from Iraq and created a vacuum where ISIS took over. Is he accountable for that? He didn't enforce a red line in Syria, and now oversaw a huge refugee crisis, which is now infecting Europe. Is Obama responsible for that? So no one's reporting this is all the aftermath of a failed foreign policy, and everyone's talking about Islamophobia or Trump. That's not the issue.
Oh, no,
not the issue at all, Juan.
Let me help you. Lock him up.
I don't need help at all.
Get Obama. Lock him up. What kind of foolishness is this?
Well, what did I say that was foolish?
Because it's not a failed foreign policy. I think the situation has changed. Even Greg said earlier, it's a different situation.
Okay, you're just saying something is failing.
I didn't say that as a positive, did I?
I know, but it has changed. And to reiterate, the point here is we've got a different situation in Libya, a different situation in Syria.
I call those failed situations. Well, I wouldn't put a rosy spin on it.
There's no rosy. What we have here is chaos in many situations.
I agree.
And we have to come up with strategies that are effective. Well, that's what we're trying to do.
We didn't have a strategy for the last 8 years.
And work together.
We did. That's why we had so many attacks.
Remember? Yeah, we had a lot domestically.
We did not.
One. We had a ton domestic terrorist attacks under Obama.
Right. You know, that's it.
Fort Hood, San Bernardino. Today to defend his new budget proposal that's predictably come under heavy fire from Democrats.
This budget, along with the relentless attempts to repeal the Affordable Care Act, shows an unimaginable level of cruelty.
Food out of the mouths of babies, housing from seniors and our veterans. It's like one punch in the face after another to hardworking people.
It is not an overstatement to say that some children will die because of this.
Okay. Late night hosts are on the attack as well.
This budget makes huge promises that it can't possibly deliver. It could leave millions of Americans without necessary services like health care or even food. It's basically the Fire Festival of budgets.
This budget cuts things like the food stamp program, SNAP, and the children's health insurance program, CHIP. I know this is an unpopular position these days, but I believe children should go to the doctor and eat.
All right, so Kimberly, the Trump budget is going to kill babies and take their food.
We've heard this before, haven't we?
Every
time. Because Republicans or conservatives are demonized more than ISIS. They want to starve children. They don't want to take care of them. They're going to cause the death of everybody, including people's favorite grandmother. I mean, it's really hysteria. It's not at all trying to build and unite and make sure that people have excellent health care coverage. This kind of like hysteria and terrifying people, I think, is just making people sick, to be quite honest. You know,
I know
physically, mentally the whole thing.
I mean, Juan, you guys are attacking Trump's budget harder than you attack ISIS. I mean, do you have a leg to stand on since President Obama for 8 years never even proposed a balanced budget?
You know, I'm just amused because, but let me treat you seriously for a second. Let me because I want to honor and respect this concept. You think this is just the left, but guess what? I'm reading in the newspaper, Senator Cornyn in Texas, a good conservative, says this budget's dead on arrival. Nobody's taking it seriously.
They're all dead on arrival.
Hold on, Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows. He says he draws the line at cutting Meals on Wheels for seniors. Mark Walker, chairman of the Republican Study Committee, says cuts to children's health care not going to happen. These are conservative Republicans, Jesse.
Listen, it's an opening salvo. That's how Trump negotiates. But, you know, look what we're spending some money on here. Climate change musicals, $7 million on grasshopper research.
Oh, my God.
How about this? $3 million on a lesbian obesity study, Dana.
Did you read that one cover to cover?
He stopped for the pictures.
Right.
Why?
There's
room to cut.
Don't jump on that train.
Well, yes, of course there's room to cut. What Juan is saying is actually true. That's why it's hard to actually get this done. But the truth is that until people in Washington are willing to actually come together and deal with some of the bigger things, then you're going to actually have less money to spend on discretionary programs like SNAP or CHIP. I do think the Democrats need to explain to us why, and I can understand why you increase SNAP benefits, food benefits basically, after the 2008 financial crisis.
Right.
I get that. But if President Obama had such a great economy, and now we're at 4.4% unemployment, and those numbers haven't come down at all, why is that? And there's a problem there that they can't answer in terms of the policy. So I do think it's a little bit of rinse and repeat. We've heard all of these complaints about this before, but until both parties are willing to come together and actually deal with the increase of Social Security and Medicare, there is going to be less money for other things. That's just the way it's going to be.
GPJ. Great point, General.
Greg, what do you think about the budget?
Well, you know what? I just realized it's time to start playing their game. You know, we sit here and every year we're told that we kill children, the elderly, the disabled, the pets. Liberal programs over 4 decades have killed more people than cancer.
Ooh.
See, I can do it too.
Yeah,
if
just
you
say
do
it.
If you can say it without any backup, I can say stuff like that too. De Blasio says children will die. How many police officers have you put in harm's way by marginalizing their jobs, by saying that, you know, you have to tell your kids, you know, to be careful with the police? How many cops' lives did you put in jeopardy when you did that?
Wow.
So screw
Just say it.
you. By the way, you know what the other thing too is, like, some of these are reductions in increases. So it's like saying you're going to get a 5% raise instead of a 7% raise, and somehow you're a monster. If you try to make any subtle, tiny change, people say you're going. It's such a gimmick, and they get away with the gimmick because the media lets them get away with it.
Right.
If you say Republicans are trying to make babies die, then the media goes, Republicans are trying to make the media die. It's collusion. Yes, collusion.
We found collusion.
We found it. We don't want a special counsel.
I want an investigation.
Jesse, for you, one more thing tomorrow. Could you find some video of the EPA climate change musical?
Yes, and if I
think that'd
can,
be awesome.
Kimberly will perform it for us. Next, an unbelievable story here in New York City. The mayor, de Blasio, going to march in a parade that's honoring a
terrorist on June 11th. Oscar Lopez Rivera spent over 35 years in prison for his role in FALN, a Puerto Rican national group responsible for over 100 terror bombings here in the United States. President Obama commuted his 70-year sentence before leaving office. A number of sponsors have pulled out of the parade, but New York's Democratic Mayor Bill de Blasio still plans to be there and march behind Rivera.
I believe this parade is a very, very important part of the life of our city. The parade committee made a choice this year on someone to honor. That does not change the basic nature of the parade. Whether you agree with that choice or not, it's still the Puerto Rican parade. And my point is, I will be there to honor the Puerto Rican people. I intend on marching. It's as simple as that.
Oh, God. All right, Greg, way to take a stand by the mayor.
He is the worst person on the planet.
Honestly.
And I mean, look, in Manchester right now, they're searching for a bomb maker. He's celebrating one. I mean, this is a guy who started an organization that was involved in over 120 bombings that killed people and injured police officers. Imagine the police officers that have to protect this parade. That is their job. That's what they're going to do. But they're protecting and celebrating somebody who would normally target that parade. What is it with progressives and terrorists? They claim to be for peace, but then they drop to their knees for people like Bill Ayers and this joker. It's like they fall in love with the idea of the revolutionary. The revolutionary. No, they're terrorists. They killed innocents.
It's a weird sort of way, Juan, for them to be captured by political correctness in a different way than what we were talking about earlier.
This is exactly right. I mean, I think there's no defense for it, to my mind. I think that's why we see big companies. I think they're so right. You know, for everybody from Coca-Cola, even Goya, which is a Latin food company, says we're not doing this.
Good
and
for
I think that's right. Now let me
Love
just
the
say,
beans.
let me just say, I remember when back in the 80s you had the Irish parade here, and you had them have an IRA guy out front as the Grand Marshal, and you had I think it was Cardinal Cook who spurned him.
Yeah.
But you have to say no, and I think we have to be consistent, Greg.
Would de Blasio have taken any blowback, Kimberly, if he had said no? I mean,
He's
it's
just
able to withstand it, don't you think?
He's so awful in so many ways. It's just terrible. I mean, look, I'm half Irish, half Puerto Rican. I don't know why my people on the parades. I don't know. But let me tell you something.
You're tough, kid.
Which side do you want? I don't know. So, de Blasio, this doesn't surprise me because this is a man who has treated, the police officers and law enforcement with disdain and disrespect.
Right.
And really, as you mentioned earlier, Greg, made the streets less safe for police officers to even be able to do their jobs.
Right.
So this is really just consistent with his lack of regard for public safety and for the men and women that serve and put it on the line every day in blue. I applaud Goya. I love your products, and way to take a stand on this.
Jesse, what do you think about President Obama actually commuting the sentence? I mean, what kind of message does that send?
Surprise.
I figured that'd be the point you wanted to
another
make.
terrorist. Yeah, obviously. Is that where you got your nice tan in Puerto Rico? Were you doing some research for the parade?
Yes, just down the street.
Looks beautiful. I love how de Blasio threw the parade committee under the bus. He's like, oh, it's the parade committee. If I was on the parade committee, I'd be a little angry. The mayor just throws you under the bus like that. I don't like de Blasio. He doesn't like me, so I have anything good to say. I think he actually might win re-election, which is scary. Because I can't believe I'm saying that.
But Greg is drafting me.
Kimberly's got to run.
Yeah.
Kimberly has to run.
Vote for a law-abiding Irish Puerto Rican.
And we gotta run.
You own both parades.
And I'm going to ask very nicely for the money. I'm going to say, listen, you got to pay up, folks. We're defending these people. You got to pay up. It's obsolete.
Wow, that was candidate Trump just last year voicing his opinion of NATO, calling the alliance obsolete because member countries weren't paying enough or doing enough to address terrorism. So it'll be interesting to see how tomorrow's summit goes down in Brussels, where the president arrived today. So what do you think, Greg?
Well, what about what? I wasn't listening.
Is that right? See, I was doing that in the break, and you went on my ass. But Mr. Smart Pants over there.
All right, he stakes out an extreme position. Trump stakes out an extreme position, creates chaos, forcing the other side to respond, and he gets them to move towards him. That's just every position begins as an act that moves towards agreeable. I do this at restaurants with my wife because she's always worried about how much I eat. I order a buttload of food, and then she says, no, but I'm left with what I want, what I really wanted, which is a plate of salt and pepper pork chops well done.
By the way, they're out of those
so
tonight.
Dana,
yes.
Dana,
you're sad, right?
Is it possible that, in fact, what the president said was absolutely right? Only 5 countries that pay 2% of their GDP for defense. But he was suggesting somehow that they should pay it to the United States. I don't think that's...
Well, I think that was just on the campaign trail. I think, obviously, when you become president, you understand a little bit more fully how much you need organizations like NATO. And I think the 2 big issues are going to be burden sharing, so what he was talking about, the money, and counterterrorism. And they have great reason to talk about that. Russia will also loom large. And I think that the NATO allies are going to explain their concern about Russian involvement in Ukraine. And the president had also said on the campaign trail that he would help protect Ukraine. So there's a lot of those issues. And the other thing I think that he will ask for, because this is a decision he's going to have to make soon, is he will ask NATO countries to help more in Afghanistan and Iraq for training for the military and police.
So, Jesse, what about that Russia issue that Dana raised? Is he now committed that if there's an attack on a NATO country, the United States will honor its NATO commitments?
Well, you know, Russia's in bed with Trump, Juan, so, you know, we're just going to let Russia walk all over NATO, and we're not going to pay up. Yeah, is that the conspiracy now, that Trump wants to weaken NATO so they can let Russia take over? I don't think it has anything to do with that. Greg is right. Strong opening bid. You say they got to pay up. You say they got to pay up now, and, you know, they rattled their cage. Obama asked nicely, and no one listened to him. Trump was tough, and now they're coming to the table, and it's working.
What about Germany?
Well, everybody's got to pay, Juan. The EU and the majority of our allies are not capable, really, you know, of defending themselves without military assistance from the United States. I think it should be equitable. People should, you know, pay their fair share to be able to be part of this alliance, especially now more than ever. We need cooperation, and that cooperation goes across all lines, which is financial as well, sharing intelligence, working together in communication, and standing united against terrorism and problems that we're all facing that we can all relate to. So, I mean, I think NATO has its place. I think it can be very effective if we put in the right amount of resources, and it just can't be the United States every single time and people dipping into our well every time.
I was surprised that Germany's not on the list of the 5 countries that pay 2%. It's Greece, Poland, Estonia, and the United Kingdom and the U.S. Where's Germany? Anyway, one more thing up next.
My belly pain and constipation? I could build a small city with all the over-the-counter products I've used. Enough.